They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I preferred mine served perfectly chilled, amidst the sparkling, unforgiving frost of late December. Christmas had always been my favorite time of year, a time for genuine warmth, not the fake smiles that plastered the faces of the corporate elite. This year, however, Christmas was merely the stage, the perfectly decorated backdrop for a reckoning that had been brewing for 11 months. My name is Eleanor Vance, or rather, that was the name on the meager intern badge I wore. The name on the company deeds was quite different, a fact only my lawyers and the ghost of my father knew. I had been back for a year, moving like a ghost through the halls of Vance Tech, the multi-billion-dollar empire my father had founded and bequeathed to me. But I wasn't here to sign papers or sit in the penthouse office. I was here to watch, to observe the decay. Specifically, to watch Karen Hayes, the woman my father had trusted implicitly, the woman I had foolishly admired, who now sat in the CEO's chair, running my legacy into the ground. Karen wasn't just managing the company. She was dismantling it, piece by piece, selling off assets, manipulating financials, and ruling the entire organization with a venomous combination of arrogance and incompetence. She was the queen of a dying kingdom, unaware that the true heir was sweeping the floor in the break room. My disguise was simple: plain clothes, a cheap watch, and an invented backstory of being a struggling student desperate for entry-level experience. As Ellie, I was invisible, the perfect fly on the wall. Karen, meanwhile, was spectacularly visible. She treated the December run-up to the annual Vance Tech Christmas Gala as her personal coronation. The office environment was thick with fear and forced holiday cheer. For weeks, I endured the microaggressions, the way she'd click her tongue if I took too long refilling her organic coffee, the public, scathing critiques of my spreadsheets, which were, ironically, flawless. But the final unforgivable insult came 3 days before the gala. It wasn't about a spreadsheet or an early meeting. It was about a gift. Vance Tech had a tradition, a secret Santa for the entire office, capped at a modest $100 to foster team spirit. I hadn't expected much, but the gift I received was a small, leather-bound antique edition of A Christmas Carol. A book I had mentioned in passing was my father's favorite. It was a deeply personal, thoughtful present. I tucked it carefully beneath my desk, planning to read the first chapter that evening. Later that afternoon, Karen swept past my cubicle, her expensive suede boots clicking against the marble floor. She didn't look at me, but she glanced at the desk. 10 minutes later, I returned from the supply closet to find the book gone. I didn't panic. I knew immediately who had taken it. Karen had a habit of claiming things she deemed too good for the lower staff, but I needed confirmation. I subtly checked the security footage from the hallway. There she was, Karen, casually leaning down, plucking the book from beneath my desk, and walking away with the smug, entitled air of a cat stealing cream. It wasn't the book itself. I could buy 1,000 copies. It was the principle. She didn't just steal a generic gift. She stole a piece of my personal, seasonal joy, confirming her utter disdain for the people who actually ran the company. This was more than corporate mismanagement. It was malice. She had stolen my gift, believing Ellie was a nobody, a disposable resource. She didn't know I was the true owner of everything she touched, everything she breathed. That evening, the meticulously constructed plan for the gala solidified. My revenge wouldn't be a quiet firing. It had to be a detonation. It had to be public, humiliating, and inextricably linked to the very holiday spirit she had corrupted. I spent the next 48 hours not fixing spreadsheets, but finalizing the digital evidence package, confirming the acquisition of her largest creditors, and, most importantly, ensuring my grand entrance would coincide with the precise moment of maximum attendance and seasonal sentimentality. The gala was on Christmas Eve, the night of the supposed miracle. This year, the only miracle would be the sudden, catastrophic fall of Karen Hayes. I watched her the next day, her smile wide and artificial as she dictated the seating chart for the gala. She even spared a moment to address me, not by my name, but with a cruel, condescending wave of her manicured hand. "Ellie, ensure the ice sculptures arrive exactly on time. We wouldn't want to ruin the look, would we? Especially for the important guests." Her emphasis on important was a clear dagger aimed at my status, or lack thereof. I met her gaze, offering a small, submissive nod, the perfect mask of the compliant, easily forgotten intern. Inside, a storm was gathering, the calm before the Christmas Eve storm. Karen Hayes had stolen my gift, my peace, and my father's company. I was about to give her a very special, very public Christmas present in return. Complete, irreversible ruin. The humiliation I had endured would pale in comparison to the power inversion coming at her in front of every single influential client and shareholder. The moment was approaching. The veil was about to drop. The air in the office on Christmas Eve wasn't festive. It was brittle, charged with anticipation and the silent tyranny of Karen Hayes. The clock ticked slower than usual, counting down the minutes until the annual Vance Tech Christmas Gala, the event Karen had successfully transformed from a celebration of collective success into a grotesque exhibition of her individual power. For me, Ellie, the day was a final gauntlet of calculated submission. I wore the same simple, ill-fitting suit I had worn all year, the costume of the overlooked. Karen, predictably, arrived in a blindingly expensive holiday ensemble, a visual testament to the money she was hemorrhaging from my family's trust. Her final, exquisite cruelty came at 3 p.m. during the obligatory team cheer session she had organized. Everyone was gathered, clutching lukewarm, sparkling cider, waiting for Karen to distribute her corporate bonuses. A pittance, usually, but a moment of manufactured goodwill. She called out names, showering the senior staff with effusive praise and envelopes thick with cash. When she reached my name, she paused, her eyes, usually cold, glinting with a predatory amusement. "And finally," she announced, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "we have Ellie. Oh, Ellie, you've been present. Unfortunately, your performance metrics haven't quite met the initiative standards we require at this level of the organization. But since it's Christmas, darling, we won't leave you empty-handed." She didn't hand me a bonus envelope. Instead, she produced a single, oversized, wrapped candy cane from behind her back and dropped it into my waiting palm. It was a gesture so petty, so deliberately public and humiliating, that a stunned silence fell over the room. She was making a spectacle of my perceived failure, painting me as the one meager, unworthy thing in her golden domain. "Now," she said, loud enough for the entire room to hear, "don't spend it all in one place. And Ellie, I need you to stay late. Someone needs to ensure all the decorations are packed neatly before the gala starts. You wouldn't want to miss that lovely little opportunity, would you?" She winked, a gesture of pure, distilled contempt. The laughter that followed was muted, but it was there, the sound of sycophants confirming their place in the hierarchy by stepping on the lowest rung. The irony was a razor-sharp edge in my chest. She was lecturing me on initiative while systematically executing a massive, ongoing corporate fraud I had meticulously documented. She was giving me a candy cane while sitting in a chair bought by my father's sweat, surrounded by a company I legally controlled. I met her eyes one last time, my expression carefully blank. Inside, the last flicker of hesitation extinguished. The candy cane, a symbol of childhood sweetness and Christmas benevolence, was twisted into the perfect symbol of her corrupted holiday spirit. I held on to it, a strange, pathetic little trophy, and quietly replied, "Of course, Ms. Hayes. I'll make sure everything is in order." The next few hours were a blur of purposeful, methodical action. As Ellie, I meticulously packed away the tinsel, the cheap plastic ornaments, and the signs of a Christmas she had hollowed out. But while my hands moved on the periphery, My mind was running through the final stages of the real operation. My phone, a secure military-grade device hidden in a forgotten filing cabinet, was my command center. I had confirmed the secure transmission of the final devastating evidence package to the relevant authorities, timed for release the moment my identity was revealed. The evidence included not just the financial fraud that would collapse her career, but a surprisingly poetic detail: the security footage of her stealing the antique Christmas book from under my desk. That minor theft, that small, mean-spirited act against Ellie the intern, would be the final emotionally resonant piece of the puzzle. It would expose the true measure of her character, a thief who couldn't resist a small, personal victory, even when she already controlled the entire operation. As the time neared 7 p.m., the last employees rushed out, eager for the opulence of the gala. I took a final long look at the abandoned corporate space. This place was a mausoleum of my father's ideals. Now, it was time to leave Ellie behind. I walked into the executive washroom, a sanctuary Karen never used, and performed my transformation. The ill-fitting suit was shed. Beneath it, I slipped into a custom-tailored emerald green gown, the color of Christmas hope, and a nod to the green of the company's original logo. The glasses came off. The severe ponytail was undone, cascading into a perfectly styled, powerful wave. The cheap watch was replaced by a familiar, weighty diamond cuff, a gift from my father on my 18th birthday. I was no longer the invisible shadow. I was Eleanor Vance, the real CEO, resurrected just in time for Christmas. I stepped out of the office and into the waiting black car. My appearance now screamed wealth, authority, and lineage. The driver, a trusted family retainer who had played the role of a parking attendant all year, didn't need instructions. He knew the destination, the grand ballroom, where the Vance Tech Christmas Gala was already in full swing. My heart was not pounding with fear, but with a cold, focused fury. Every humiliation Karen had inflicted, every dismissive wave of her hand, every condescending word, and especially the stolen Christmas book and the pathetic candy cane, had been meticulously documented and accounted for. This wasn't just justice. It was a performance, a dramatic inversion demanded by the season of giving. I was about to give Karen Hayes the gift of her life's definitive, public, career-ending failure. The car pulled up to the ballroom. Through the grand, arched windows, I could see the dazzling lights, the perfectly arranged tables, and at the center, holding court like a false idol, was Karen. She was smiling, sipping champagne, oblivious to the fact that the actual owner of the building, the company, and the very ground she stood upon was about to walk through those doors and send her entire corrupt world crashing down into a pile of ruined Christmas glitter. The stage was set. The audience was waiting. My cue was next. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont was a symphony of silver, ice, and enforced merriment. Crystal chandeliers cast a dazzling, deceptive glow over hundreds of the city's most powerful clients and shareholders. The Vance Tech Christmas Gala was the place to be, and Karen Hayes was fully inhabiting her role as the gracious, all-powerful host. She stood by the massive, towering Christmas tree, delivering a self-congratulatory toast. Her voice amplified across the room. She spoke of growth, innovation, and future opportunities, all hollow promises built on a foundation of lies. This was the moment of maximum public exposure. This was my stage. I entered the ballroom not through the main doors, but through the private executive entrance reserved for the truly important, the owners. The sudden, hushed ripple of recognition started small, near the entrance, and grew exponentially as I moved toward the center of the room. Heads turned, whispers erupted, the name Vance circulating like a spark among dry tinder. No one had seen me in years, but my resemblance to my father was striking, especially in the regal posture that Ellie had so carefully hidden. Karen, mid-sentence about the magic of the season, saw me. Her smile froze, not just a little, but catastrophically, transforming her face into a mask of sudden, dawning horror. I didn't rush. I walked slowly, every step radiating ownership and cold, absolute control. I reached the podium just as Karen managed to stammer, Who let you in? Security! I took the microphone from her trembling hand. The sound of feedback squealed momentarily, followed by perfect silence. The entire room, shareholders, board members, clients, and even a few of the lower-level staff who had witnessed Karen's abuses, was focused on me. "Good evening," I began, my voice clear, steady, and amplified across the magnificent hall. "Please accept my apologies for interrupting the CEO's address. But since this is a Vance Tech event, and given the nature of the holiday, a time for truth and reckoning, I felt compelled to make my own, rather necessary announcement." I paused, allowing the implication to sink into the minds of the shocked audience. Karen was hyperventilating, her frantic eyes darting around the room, searching for a non-existent ally. "My name is Eleanor Vance," I stated, the name echoing the weight of the company's legacy, "and I am the controlling owner and chairwoman of Vance Tech, Inc. I have been for the last year." The collective gasp from the room was the sound of a billion-dollar reality fracturing. Karen stumbled back, her expensive champagne glass slipping from her grasp and shattering loudly on the marble floor. "For the past 12 months, I continued, pivoting slightly to address the shareholders, I have been working within this organization, often in the most humbling capacity, to understand why my father's legacy was failing. And tonight, on Christmas Eve, I have the answer." My eyes locked onto Karen, who looked utterly destroyed, the color draining from her face. "The failure," I declared, "was a betrayal. It was perpetrated by Ms. Hayes, who, under the cover of her executive title, has been systematically defrauding this company, manipulating assets, and engaging in criminal misconduct." The atmosphere shifted from shock to controlled chaos. Before anyone could truly react, I produced a small, silver-plated device and pressed a button. Instantly, the massive, state-of-the-art video screen behind the main stage, previously displaying a festive Happy Holidays graphic, flickered and came to life. The first image on the screen was a crystal-clear, time-stamped still of Karen, 3 days prior, leaning down by my desk. The next frame was a close-up, showing her hand grasping the antique leather book, a stolen gift. "The scale of her corporate theft is staggering," I narrated calmly, as the screen transitioned to detailed charts of offshore accounts and falsified invoices. "But to truly grasp the character of the person running this multi-billion-dollar entity, you must appreciate the small things." I held up the stolen book, which I had retrieved hours before the gala. "This is an antique edition of A Christmas Carol. Ms. Hayes stole this item from one of her low-level interns, an intern she publicly humiliated and gifted a single candy cane to earlier today." The camera on the screen then focused on the antique book in my hand. Then, with a chilling, dramatic flourish, I reached into my gown pocket and pulled out the pathetic, brightly striped candy cane Karen had given me. I held both items up, the stolen book and the insulting candy cane, symbols of her corporate and personal corruption, side by side. She stole my gift, believing I was nothing. She abused her power, confident she was untouchable. "Well, Ms. Hayes," I said, my voice dropping to a powerful, cold register, "your Christmas gift arrived at 7:55 p.m. tonight. As of 5 minutes ago, the Securities and Exchange Commission, along with the District Attorney's Office, received the comprehensive audit and video evidence of your financial and ethical crimes. Your credit facilities have been revoked. The board, acting upon the evidence, has just voted for your immediate removal, and frankly, I would advise you to leave the premises before the police arrive, which will be in approximately 2 minutes." Karen didn't move. She didn't scream or argue. She simply collapsed onto the steps of the podium, her expensive holiday gown crumpled beneath her. publicly undone in front of every single person whose respect she had desperately chased. The inversion was complete. The victim stood tall, triumphant. The traitor was exposed, humiliated, and utterly ruined on the most festive, meaningful night of the year. The applause that finally erupted wasn't forced or polite. It was the roar of justice served, the sound of an entire company being liberated just in time for the new year.